we do have time for just a few questions, but I think that we do have one pending, and you might have touched on it a bit with this last segment that you did, and it is from Kathy Brown, and she says, are there some good community case examples where they are utilizing the principles and practices suggested through your research? And you did talk about Riverview in that case study, and I wonder if maybe there were a few other studies that you did, or others may have done, that you could maybe just touch on, because I think maybe Riverview might have answered Kathy's question, but maybe there are some others that you could mention.
So yeah, so Riverview might have answered a question about schools, but I'm not sure if the question came in when I was talking. It may have, or maybe right in the middle. But I think that, yeah, the challenges that communities face in terms of fostering integration and attracting people of all different races and ethnicities. I think that the case study that comes to most readily to mind for me is the one where I live nearby, which is Oak Park, Illinois, which has something called the Oak Park Regional Housing Center, which essentially helps to encourage people to make moves they might not otherwise do. And they literally on the ground confront these stereotypes that people hold about certain parts of Oak Park being desirable and undesirable. And they do this sort of on an intensive one-on-one housing counseling context where they are literally helping people find apartments, and in one-on-one conversations with them, they are breaking down these stereotypes and these reputations that come with people when they come to a community about where the good sides of the community are and the bad sides of the community are. There are other case studies sort of diverse communities that are intentionally integrated, we might call them, as opposed to integrated sort of by accident, where they do some of these things like marketing, where they're marketing diversity as a value that people should want to pay to come and live in or to be a part of, and they're sort of being very explicit and intentional in their marketing in that respect. So that's kind of another example of people trying to overcome some of the challenges that I talked about in terms of places having reputations for and against their group.
Right. And I think as it relates to school settings, one of the things that we've seen is places that raise expectations for all students and in some sense eliminate some of the hierarchies in educational tracks. So one example of this is a local district, Evanston schools have instituted an earned honors classroom where they have mixed level kids from different educational levels in a course, but they have to earn their honors credit. So they've raised the standards for what counts for honors credit, and students are able to earn honors credit based on the amount of work that they've done rather than simply being based on being placed in a class with an honors designation. So again, there are ways to sort of break down some of the hierarchies as they relate to educational achievement in integrated schools as well.
Pamela would like to know where PowerPoints might be available. I could be available to have people come to one source, or unless the presenters would prefer people to come to you directly, or if there's somewhere else that your PowerPoints would be available, or if they're not. So I'll leave that up to you individuals to give that information.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's fine, and I think at some point they'd be up on the IGPA website, and yeah, that was the expectation, that this would be available.
Very good. So I'm going to type my email in here so that if anybody wants to, they can kind of immediately come to me, and I can get the PowerPoints to you, participants, and then look to IGPA. And obviously, Dr. Diamond's not with IGPA, but we have a couple other questions coming through. And then the recording, as Kathy pointed out, will be available, and we can also, we'll make sure people get a posting to that. Places that market diversity? Is there places that market diversity?
I think there are assorted communities around the country. See, Mike Malley did a great ethnographic accounting of diverse communities in the Oakland area, and in California, and in the New York area, and in Chicago. And he talks about, especially the one in, it was a while since I've read the book, but especially the one in California, talking about a community nurturing and fostering a market that was international in flavor to sort of extol the virtues of a diverse setting community.
And then we have a question here from Brent, and I'll read it in its entirety. As a member of Peoria, where CAP just announced a huge investment into Peoria's older urban core, where the neighborhoods are predominantly lower income and African American, has immediately turned my mind to gentrification taking place over the next several years. Could someone speak to the gentrification problems, myth, and is there a happy medium? Or can it be used as a tool to foster diverse neighborhoods without pricing native residents, and what proactive actions can be taken at a city level to facilitate these? And I think with that kind of multi-question, we'll end with that, and I'll turn that over to the speakers.
So it's a great question. I'm glad it came at the end when there was only 2 minutes. That I can't do justice to the issue. I think that the participant raises an excellent question about the the challenges associated with gentrification. I will just point a couple of points that you threw when you wrote the question was sort of, is it a myth? I don't think it's a myth. I think people that live in communities where this happens, it's absolutely not a myth. It's a reality. And I think that somebody has to figure out, and that's not my specialty, how to do this kind of development in a way that does not shut people out and close people down. I'm not the expert on gentrification. I will say, to pick up on the notion of a myth, though, is that in general, if you took a look at sort of the Chicago metropolitan area as a broad, large context, the percentage of communities that are experiencing integration is minuscule compared to the communities, gentrification, did I say that right? Experiencing gentrification is minuscule in relative to the sort of large patterns of segregation and large patterns of the direction of change in neighborhoods. By and large, is one from all white to all black, not from all black to all white. So those are kind of the nuggets off the top of my head thoughts I have. But there's certainly a large body of academic research looking at gentrification. I'm just not as facile with it as I am with this. You don't have to apologize, Brent, but thank you for the frowny face. I appreciate it.
I guess as it relates to school processes, there are patterns of change in schools that are interesting to examine. And I know one interesting book by Lynn Posey Maddox sort of looks at this process of class and racial change in a local neighborhood school that might be interesting for folks to look at. I think there are complicated dynamics and around change that would be very interesting for folks.